He looked like money, talked like mystery, walked like he belonged to a world built on quiet wealth and understated luxury. She was drawn to him from the moment she saw him, certain he was hiding billions behind that sharp blazer and calm confidence. But the truth? He wasn't secretly rich. He was just really, really good at dressing like he was. Now, with the illusion unraveling and the lines between image and identity blurring, both of them must face what brought them together and what might keep them apart. Hello family, welcome to Storytime with Imzi. Please subscribe and like, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The city pulsed with its usual Friday night rhythm. Horns in the distance, the hum of traffic below, laughter drifting up from sidewalks crowded with couples and cliques chasing the weekend. Atop one of downtown's boutique hotels, a rooftop bar flickered with candlelight, soft jazz, and the low clink of expensive glassware. It was the kind of place where the ice cubes were carved into perfect spheres and the menu used words like infusion and notes of citrus. Charlotte Monroe leaned on the brass railing, letting the breeze lift a few strands of her chestnut hair as she scanned the terrace. She wasn't looking for anyone, not really. She was just tired of the same recycled conversations from men who measured charm in dollars and bragged about their watch collections. Then she saw him. He stood alone near the edge of the terrace, half-shadowed by a potted olive tree, sipping red wine like it was a ritual. Tall, clean lines, crisp navy blazer over a white shirt, collar unbuttoned just enough to suggest ease without sloppiness. His shoes, Italian loafers, she guessed, caught the glow of string lights as he shifted his weight casually from one foot to the other. He wasn't talking to anyone, not checking his phone, not trying to be noticed. That was what made her notice him. She tilted her head, studying him. There was a quiet confidence to the way he stood, like someone who didn't need attention to validate his presence. Men with that kind of posture were usually wealthy. Not the loud kind of wealth, either, but the generational, private fund, old money kind. The kind who grew up knowing how to order wine, how to listen without interrupting, how to make you feel like you'd known them longer than you had. Charlotte picked up her drink and approached him, heels tapping a gentle rhythm against the tiled floor. She stopped a few feet away, offering a smile that was equal parts casual and curious. "You look like someone who has better things to do than drink alone," she said. He glanced at her, smile forming slowly, like it had to pass a few internal filters before reaching his lips. "Not tonight," he replied. Tonight, this was the plan. She raised an eyebrow, amused. Mysterious and content with solitude. Dangerous combination. He laughed, and it was warm, unforced. Just a guy enjoying a decent glass of wine and a quiet skyline. No posturing. No pretense. It intrigued her even more. They talked. About music, about the city, about the strange sociology of rooftop bars. He introduced himself, Daniel. No surname, no job title, no casual name-dropping. When she asked what he did, he said, logistics, with a tone so light it invited no follow-ups. To Charlotte, that only confirmed her suspicion. Wealthy men never wanted to talk about their money. By the end of the night, she still knew little about him, but somehow that made her want to know more. The first date came quickly, though neither of them called it that. Charlotte suggested a place in the West End, somewhere with reclaimed wood tables, candlelit corners, and a wine list longer than its food menu. Daniel arrived precisely on time, dressed in that same effortlessly composed style. Slate gray blazer, black turtleneck, and trousers that looked like they belonged in a boutique window. Not flashy, just precise. He smiled as he pulled out her chair. "This place is good lighting," he said. "For the food or the people?" "Both. But mostly the people." Charlotte laughed, brushing a curl from her cheek. She noticed how easily he held eye contact, how he didn't seem to fidget or fill silences with noise. There was an ease to him she found rare, especially among men in these neighborhoods. Usually she could spot the ones faking it. Daniel didn't seem like he was pretending. He seemed like someone who just belonged. They talked over saffron risotto and imported olives, the conversation gliding across topics: film, architecture, small frustrations about city life. But never once did he mention work. He listened more than he spoke, nodded at the right moments, smiled in a way that made her feel like her words actually mattered. When the check came, he paid with a matte black card she didn't recognize. That was when the assumption cemented itself. She didn't say anything. She just filed it away alongside other signs. The watch on his wrist, not flashy but definitely expensive. The tailored fit of his coat. The way he tipped the waiter without glancing at the amount. No hesitation. No ego. It was the signature, she thought, of someone with quiet wealth. Over the following weeks, they floated through the city like two people detached from time. Dinners at private rooftops, jazz lounges hidden behind unmarked doors, pop-up galleries where the art was priced in 5 digits. Daniel never suggested these places, Charlotte did. But he never flinched at the cost. He fit in wherever they went. That only made her theory stronger. He was probably one of those discreet millionaires, the kind who didn't like to talk about money because they never had to. One night, after a film screening, she leaned back in his passenger seat, an older BMW, clean and understated, and asked playfully, "So tell me something. What's your story, really?" He glanced at her, amused. "I told you. Logistics." She gave a knowing smirk. No one that good-looking in a turtleneck actually works in logistics. He laughed but didn't offer anything more. And Charlotte, satisfied with the mystery, didn't push. She assumed he was being careful. Smart. A man like him didn't need to brag. In fact, the more he didn't say, the more convinced she became that he had everything. Money. Taste. Mystery. The perfect combination. Daniel Blake did not live in a penthouse. He lived on the 3rd floor of a weathered brownstone in a neighborhood described by real estate agents as up-and-coming. His bedroom window faced a brick wall. The building had no doorman, no elevator, and a plumbing system that groaned like it resented being used. His roommates were 2 graphic designers who treated recycling like a religion and cooked everything in cast iron. On most nights, the apartment smelled like black coffee, instant noodles, and whatever discount candles were on sale at the corner store. And yet, every time Daniel stepped outside, you'd think he was somebody. His closet wasn't vast, but it was curated. Blazers tailored at thrift stores, coats pressed to perfection, shirts always crisp. He studied fabric labels the way other men read wine menus. He had a rule: never wear something that looked like it came in a plastic package. He shined his shoes by hand, steamed his shirts in the bathroom, and styled his hair with the same care a sculptor gives to stone. It wasn't about appearances, not entirely. He genuinely loved the aesthetic, the architecture of clothing, the confidence it gave him. But lately, it had become something else. A kind of shield. Because Charlotte had made an assumption. And he hadn't corrected her. She thought he was wealthy. Not showy rich, but the kind of understated rich that made you more intriguing. It started with the way she looked at him, half curious, half calculating. He could tell the wheels were turning from the first time she spotted his shoes and said, "Italian." He could have told her the truth then, thrifted. $40. Light scuff on the heel I buffed out with a toothbrush. But he didn't. He let the moment pass. And once the lie of omission had settled, everything else built itself around it. He wasn't a millionaire. He worked in warehouse operations for a distribution company, managing inbound shipments and tracking container delays. It paid modestly. Enough for rent, for groceries, for the occasional splurge on a vintage wool overcoat. But not enough for multi-course dinners and silent auctions at rooftop fundraisers. He wasn't living a double life by design. It just happened. Now, each time Charlotte booked another trendy dinner or invited him to some chic soiree with a guest list full of last names that sounded like law firms, Daniel found himself smiling through his anxiety, calculating costs in the back of his mind. He knew how to fit in. That was the easy part. But fitting in wasn't the same as belonging. One night, after an expensive dinner he pretended not to blink at, he caught his reflection in the mirror of a hotel lobby restroom. He looked good. Immaculate, even. But he stared at himself longer than usual, wondering, is this who she actually likes? Or just who she thinks I am? It started subtly, like the loosening thread at the hem of a tailored coat. Almost invisible, but once noticed, impossible to ignore. Charlotte was planning to attend a gala hosted by a modern art collective. Something about subverting spatial capitalism through interactive sculpture. Tickets were $500 each. The dress code was formal with creative flair. She sent Daniel the link in a text followed by, "You'd look incredible in a deep green tux." Just saying. Daniel stared at the message for a long time, thumb hovering over his phone. $500. That was almost half his rent. He could try to make it work, shift a few bills, eat ramen for a week, skip dry cleaning. Again. Instead, he replied, "That weekend might be tight. Warehouse is launching a new routing system. May not be able to get away." He stared at the words. The excuse felt cheap, but it was the cleanest way to dodge the truth. She replied with a simple, "Another time then," followed by a thumbs-up emoji. It felt colder than usual. The silences began to stretch after that. It wasn't that Charlotte grew distant. She was still charming, still curious, still smiling when they met. But something in her gaze had changed. Occasionally, when he stumbled on the name of a wine or hesitated too long when someone asked what sector he worked in, she'd tilt her head slightly, like she was recalibrating an equation. At one of her friend's birthday dinners, he felt it more keenly than ever. The table was crowded with people named Julian and Sloan and Brantley, each of them effortlessly talking about acquisitions and international markets, and whose family was now summering in Biarritz. Daniel played his role with ease, nodding, sipping, laughing at the right moments. But every word felt like walking across glass. "So, Daniel," one of them asked, swirling a martini, "still in logistics? Or have you pivoted into something more scalable?" Charlotte chuckled politely, brushing her hand along Daniel's arm. "He's very private about work stuff. I love that about him." The table laughed. Daniel smiled. Inside, he sank. He realized he had become a character in someone else's screenplay, a silent millionaire, too refined to be caught talking shop. But the more he performed, the more he worried about the final act. The reveal. The undoing. When they left the restaurant that night, Charlotte linked her arm through his and leaned in close. "You were quiet in there." "Just listening," he replied. "You always are." She paused, then added, "Sometimes it's like there's a whole part of you I'm not supposed to see." The words lingered. Daniel didn't answer. As they walked down the dimly lit street, the weight of everything unsaid settled around them like a coat he couldn't take off. His polished shoes clicked confidently against the pavement, but inside, Daniel felt like he was running, fast, stylishly, and nowhere close to safety. It was raining the night Charlotte decided to surprise him. Not a romantic, soft-focused drizzle. The kind of rain that drenched collars, soaked through shoes, and made the streets shine like black glass. She had finished a gallery show early, didn't feel like heading home to her empty condo, and thought of Daniel. They hadn't spoken much that week, but she missed him. Missed his calm energy, his dry humor. Something instinctual nudged her toward his place. She texted, "Outside your place. Buzz me in." No reply. She waited under the awning, shivering slightly, then tried the main door. To her surprise, it clicked open. No security system, no concierge. Just a narrow hallway that smelled faintly of old carpet and takeout. Charlotte climbed the stairs, heels echoing. She reached the third floor and followed the numbers down a chipped corridor. Apartment 3B. She raised her hand to knock. The door swung open before she could. A guy she didn't recognize stood there in gym shorts and socks, holding a slice of pizza and a gaming controller. His hair was messy, and he looked like he hadn't blinked in half an hour. "Oh," he said. "You must be Charlotte." She blinked. Yeah. Is Daniel here?" "He's in his room. I think he's steaming a jacket or something." She looked past the guy into the apartment. There was no marble countertop. No minimalist design. The walls were bare except for a crooked poster of the Grand Budapest Hotel. A pile of laundry slumped in a corner. The kitchen light buzzed faintly. It was normal. Too normal. The roommate scratched the back of his neck. "You're the one he's been fake rich dating, right? Dude's got wild commitment to aesthetics." Charlotte's face remained still, but something inside her cracked. "Thanks," she said quietly, stepping inside. She found Daniel in his room, hunched over an ironing board, steam curling up around his face as he pressed a jacket with the care of a surgeon. He looked up, startled. "Charlotte." She didn't say anything for a moment. Just looked around his room, small, clean, plain. A thrift store mirror leaned against the wall, its frame chipped. A single wooden hanger displayed a carefully pressed coat. There were books, yes, and style, but not a trace of wealth. Not a single illusion left to hide behind. "You live here," she said finally. He nodded, slow and quiet. "Yeah, I do." Her lips parted like she had more to say, but the words didn't come. She looked at the ironing board. The blazer he was so carefully preparing. The cheap steamer. The 2 pairs of shoes lined up neatly by the bed. "You're not rich," she said flatly. "No," Daniel admitted. "I'm not." She crossed her arms. "But you let me think you were. I didn't correct you. That's the same thing." Daniel looked at her, not defensive, just tired. "I liked you. I didn't want to screw it up before it started." Then it kept going. And the longer it went, the harder it got to tell you. Charlotte turned to the window, rain ticking against the glass like fingers tapping. Her reflection stared back at her, faint and fractured. "I wasn't trying to lie," he added. "I just dress the way I want to feel." She didn't respond right away. Her silence wasn't anger. It was something else. Confusion. A quiet unraveling of what she thought she knew. When she finally turned back, her expression was unreadable. "So who have I been dating this whole time?" Daniel gave her the first completely honest answer he'd offered in weeks. "Just a guy who likes looking expensive, and really hopes that's not the only reason you liked him." Charlotte didn't storm out. She didn't raise her voice or throw accusations. That would have been easier, for both of them. But instead, she sat down. On the edge of his narrow bed, beside the carefully arranged clothes and the little jar of collar stays. Rain still tapped gently against the window, softening the edges of the moment. Daniel leaned against the wall, arms folded, gaze somewhere near the floor. The silence between them was thick, but not hostile. Just uncertain, like a stage set waiting for someone to say the first line. "I keep going back to the first night we met," Charlotte said quietly. He looked up, eyes cautious. "Yeah, you were standing alone at that rooftop bar, dressed like someone who belonged on the cover of a magazine. You didn't even look at your phone once." She paused. "I thought you were rich. Like really rich. The kind who doesn't need to check stock prices because money's just already there." Daniel exhaled through his nose, half a laugh, half a confession. "I was actually Googling how to hold a wine glass properly. Just discreetly." Charlotte smiled despite herself. "And the blazer?" "Thrifted. $27. But I tailored it myself. Kind of a hobby." She looked at him differently now, not through the lens of mystery or expectation, but with a kind of sober curiosity. "Why didn't you just tell me the truth?" He met her eyes. "Because you looked at me like I was already someone. And for the first time in a long time, I liked who I was through your eyes." Her expression softened, but didn't give anything away. "I never lied about how I felt," Daniel added. "Only about what I could afford." Charlotte glanced around his room again. It was small, yes, but intentional. Everything had a place. The books were lined up by color. The shoes were spotless. There was a sense of care, even if nothing cost more than a few bills. "You really do love clothes," she said. "I love the language of them," Daniel replied. "How they make you feel, how they can speak before you do. When I was a kid, we didn't have much. I learned pretty early that people treat you differently when you look like you have something." Charlotte nodded slowly. That she understood. "And now," she asked, "what are you hoping I'll see?" Daniel looked at her, no mask left. "Just me. The guy who's not secretly rich. The guy who irons his shirts by hand and borrows jackets from friends. The guy who's tired of pretending, even if it means losing you." The room grew quiet again. But this time it wasn't heavy. Charlotte stood, walked to the window, and looked out into the rain. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass, blurred, muted, real. She didn't speak for a while. Finally, she turned back. "Okay," she said. Daniel blinked. "Okay, let's start over," she said. "Next time, you can take me to your favorite cheap coffee place. No pretenses. Just 2 people." He managed a small, genuine smile. "You sure? It's got wobbly chairs and suspicious muffins." "I'll wear flats," she said. "You can be underdressed for once." 2 weeks passed. No calls. No texts. No cryptic, late-night Instagram story replies. Daniel kept busy, busier than usual. He picked up extra shifts, reorganized the warehouse's intake schedules, and dove into his tiny apartment projects with the obsessiveness of someone avoiding emotional gravity. He even tried to go on a date. It lasted exactly one drink before he realized he wasn't listening, just comparing. Charlotte had haunted his thoughts, not in some dramatic, cinematic way, but in the quiet spaces. In the way he second-guessed his outfit before leaving the house. In the way he'd hear a jazz tune and remember how she'd hummed along to Coltrane that night in the car. He wondered if she'd gone back to dating someone who really wore bespoke suits and had a driver. Someone who wouldn't need a moment of courage just to be honest. Then, on a plain Tuesday afternoon, she texted, "Coffee? Not the artisanal kind. Just coffee." Daniel stared at the message like it was a glitch. Then he smiled. Not the careful kind, the kind that just happened. They met at a small, corner cafe that didn't advertise itself as anything special, and meant it. The coffee was cheap, strong, and served in slightly chipped mugs. The place smelled like burnt toast and old novels. Charlotte arrived wearing jeans and a jacket 2 sizes too big. He stood when she walked in. "You were right about the muffins," she said, eyeing the glass case. "Deeply untrustworthy." "You don't come here for the food," he said, smiling. They sat. No tension, no awkward searching for what to say. The conversation flowed easier now. They talked about things they hadn't before, childhood embarrassments, favorite gas station snacks, the weird comfort of mediocre movies. It was like meeting again for the first time, stripped of every silent performance. At one point, Charlotte leaned back, sipping her drink. "You know, I keep thinking about how I saw you before. When I thought you were rich." Daniel laughed lightly. "And now?" She shrugged, lips tugging into a small smile. "Now I think you're kind of a dork. But a very well-dressed dork." "I'll take that. You should." They sat in silence for a moment, the kind that didn't need filling. Daniel looked at her, this time without the pressure to impress. No luxury background hum, no fashion show. Just her, just him, in a coffee shop with wobbly tables and the soft creak of old floorboards. Charlotte broke the silence. "You know what's funny?" she said. "I still think you carry yourself like someone who has billions." Daniel smirked. "I'm rich in ironing skills and strategic thrifting." "Exactly," she said. "Style and substance. Just not in the way I expected." He took a sip of coffee, the bitter taste grounding. And for the first time in weeks, Daniel felt like he was standing on solid ground. Not performing. Not evading. Just being. A year later, no one would have guessed how it all started. Charlotte and Daniel sat side by side on a park bench on a crisp autumn morning, coffee cups in hand, watching a dog in a tiny sweater try to chase a squirrel with more confidence than speed. Leaves crunched underfoot as joggers passed by. It was ordinary and quiet and perfect. Charlotte was bundled in a thrifted trench coat she'd found on a Saturday outing with Daniel, her first real dive into his world of secondhand treasure. She had a newfound respect for fabrics, linings, and the thrill of a hidden label. He called her his thrifting apprentice. She pretended to be insulted. Daniel still dressed like someone who had meetings in glass towers, though now it felt less like a costume and more like a craft. His confidence remained, but the weight behind it had shifted. He didn't dress to impress anymore. He dressed because it brought him joy, and because Charlotte would still whistle softly whenever he walked into the room in a perfectly fitted coat. Their relationship had found its rhythm. Simple, real, balanced. There were still moments when Daniel caught someone glancing at him in a cafe or on the train. Someone trying to figure him out, wondering how a man that well-dressed carried himself so quietly. He'd smile to himself and think, let them guess. It didn't matter anymore. He had nothing to prove. Charlotte looked over at him now, watching the sunlight catch on the sharp line of his lapel. "You know," she said, "sometimes I forget you're not rich." He glanced at her, amused. "That's probably because I'm rich in vibe." She snorted. "Don't say that. I'll take it back." They laughed. The kind of laugh that doesn't need explanation. In the distance, the dog finally gave up the chase and flopped into the grass. Daniel leaned back against the bench, content. He wasn't a millionaire. He didn't own real estate, stock portfolios, or a tailored suit that wasn't touched by a steamer and sheer willpower. But he had someone next to him who saw him, fully. Who stayed, not because he looked like a secret, but because he'd stopped being one. And as far as Daniel was concerned, that was the richest thing of all.